Hi, I'm Gary Bemridge, and this is another of my tips for travelers. In this episode, I'm going to talk about the 10 unmissable sites in Iceland and why going on a cruise may be the best way of seeing these sites. But first of all, please subscribe to the channel because that way every single week you'll be alerted when there's a brand new video to help you make the most of your precious travel time and money. The sites in Iceland tend to be grouped together and have names. So you've got the Golden Circle, Jewels of the North, Pompeii of the North. Well, the first set of sites are what is known as the Golden Circle. And these are accessed out of Reykjavik. The most magnificent site of all in the Golden Circle, and one of my absolute favorites, is the Gullfoss waterfall. This is a spectacular waterfall. It is over 32 meters high. There's an 11-meter drop. There's a 21-meter drop. It cascades 140 cubic meters a second. It's the biggest flow in Europe of any waterfall. Now, there's an interesting story because of the power of it, at one time, some people wanted to turn it into a hydroelectric plant, and the farmers that owned it leased it to a foreign company to do it. And one of the farmer's daughters relentlessly tried to stop them. Luckily, eventually, she was able to stop them because they missed a payment, and it's now protected. Another magnificent site is the geyser geothermal area, and very specifically, the fantastic Strokkur geyser. Now, the Strokkur geyser erupts every couple of minutes. Now, what's interesting about geysers is the original geyser was called geyser, and that's what gave these phenomena its name. Now, the Strokkur is the only one that's still really spouting away because the original geyser is now dormant. Iceland is a very interesting country. It's basically sitting on top of enormous volcanic activity. So there's a lot of big volcanic eruptions, there's earthquakes, and also, importantly, the island is being ripped apart. Two tectonic plates come together in Iceland, the Eurasian and the North American plates. It's the only place in the world where the North Atlantic Ridge is above sea level. So you can travel to the Thingvellir National Park and a thing called the Reykjanes Ridge. From here you get not only beautiful views into a wasteland because you can't see the Eurasian plate, which is much further away, but you can see the North American plate rising way above the ground. You can walk right the way along it. Now, the next set of must-see sites are out of the gateway city of Akureyri, and these are the Jewels of the North, 4 altogether, and one of them is an absolute, for me, total and utter beauty, and it's the Godafoss. The Godafoss means waterfall of the gods, and Godafoss' name comes because of a myth at the time that Iceland was converting to Christianity, around about 1000 AD, and the lawmaker of the time, Porger, he threw his statues of the North gods over the waterfalls and converted into Christianity, and Iceland became a Christian state. One of the things I would recommend you do is to climb right down from just underneath the main viewing platform, and you get right down to the base of the falls and you get magnificent views. Now, quite close by to that is Namaskard. Namaskard is best known for more geothermal activity, but this time the bubbling mud pools. Now, depending on the weather and the way the wind's blowing, it can also smell pretty rough here with the sulfur. But there's steam coming out of the ground and there's these mud pools just bubbling away. It's a very bizarre, unworldly-like scene, and it almost feels like you're stepping into either a science fiction movie or some sort of really bizarre planet. One of the things around this area is during the summer there are little midges and they're really annoying. So you'll often see people wearing netting to keep them away from you. But they are a very important part of the whole ecological balance, but they are quite annoying. The next incredible site is near Lake Mývatn. Now, Lake Mývatn is a massive lake, and it's packed full of tens of thousands of birds. But just nearby is these incredible pseudo-craters. Now, these are not actual craters, so they do look like they've been created by volcanic eruptions, but they're not. They are just created by the lava as it flowed over some wetlands. The gases underneath it exploded into a bubble and created these craters. The scenery here is absolutely beautiful. You get great views across Lake Mývatn, and it's a very popular place for going to look at birds. The next attraction, which is seen by many as a must-see, although it wasn't one of my big favorites, and it's what's known as the Dimmuborgir lava fields. In Iceland, there's a big mythology around trolls, and what apparently is supposed to have happened at Dimmuborgir is the trolls in the area had partied all night, the sun came up, and they were turned into stone. In reality, the lava flowed over water and started to harden, but this pressure of steam built up and eventually burst its way through the lava, pulling the partly solidified lava up through, creating these very jaggedy spaces above the ground. Now, another of my real highlights and favorite destinations was in Heimaey, and the chance to go hiking up one of the big volcanoes. Heimaey is known as the Pompeii of the North. In 1973, there was a massive volcanic eruption. It began in January and lasted for 5 months. Humongous amounts of lava erupted from the volcano. It destroyed 1/3 of all the homes. Over 400 homes are covered by anything up to 10 meters of lava. The volcano that erupted is called Eldfell, which appropriately means fire mountain. The other volcano is called Helgafell. You can now climb up the volcano. It's quite a big hike. It's about 200 meters high, but the views from the top are magnificent. One of the sites that I would recommend you go and see is up in the north of Iceland, and it's Isafjordur. Isafjordur is a very beautiful part of the world where you've got these magnificent fjords, which are originally, of course, carved out by glaciers passing through. You can actually take a boat trip across to an island. The island is known as Heimaey, and the reason for going to the island is there are quite a lot of Arctic fox living there. The Arctic fox is the only indigenous animal on Iceland. Every single other animal is imported. It used to have people living here until about 1952. Originally it was a whaling station. Then in the early 1900s, when whaling was banned for a period of time and the whalers moved away, it then became a fish factory, but then the fish moved away. It's now a nature reserve, and you can go for incredible hikes, and there's a strong possibility that on Heimaey you will get to see an Arctic fox. Now, one of the things that all tourists want to do when they go to Iceland is go to the Blue Lagoon, which is a big outdoor geothermal heated pool which is rich in minerals. So I've included on the must-see sites just because it's one of those things that if you go to Iceland, you're going to want to do, and it's in Reykjavik. I believe the best way of seeing these sites is going on a cruise, and there's 3 key reasons and 1 watch out. First of all of the key sites are around the coastal areas of Iceland. A cruise can take you to the gateway ports of Reykjavik, Heimaey, Isafjordur, and Akureyri. The key thing though is you need to go on a cruise line that uses small ships, because small ships can only get into these ports. So places like Heimaey, for example, big ships can't get in there. So when you're looking at an itinerary, make sure you're going on a cruise line that has a small ship. So for example, I visited Iceland with Voyages to Antiquity, and the Aegean Odyssey is a small ship only taking around about 350 passengers, and it could get into all these places. Now, the downside of going on a cruise is the weather in Iceland is very unpredictable. So there is a chance that there could be storms or winds and the ships can't get into the smaller ports. So there's a risk that you lose some of the ports. But overall, it is a phenomenal way and is the best way, I believe, of seeing these places, because actually traveling around Iceland is relatively difficult between these places. Iceland is really becoming a real hotspot for people to go, and I can see why. And I wish I'd been to Iceland sooner, because the richness of the things to see is magnificent. Consider going on a cruise and take a look at cruise lines with small cruise ships, for example, like Voyages to Antiquity. Hopefully you found that helpful and it's inspired you. If you found this video helpful, I'd love it if you watch many more of my Tips for Travelers videos, because you'll get more inspiration, advice, and tips on how to make the most of your precious travel time and money.